The number one reason why you can't play blazing fast guitar is not because your hands are too slow, but rather it's because your brain can't keep up. And if that makes total sense to you and you got all the information you needed, then you can click off the video right now. I'm not interested in wasting anybody's time, and if that makes sense to you, then I'm very happy for you. But for those of you that want a deeper understanding, let me explain, because once this clicks for you, you will 100% unlock your true speed. So the first thing we need to understand is how our brains actually work, and we need to recognize that our brains will always take the easy route. They'll try to simplify things, create patterns, or do whatever it can to make things as easy as possible. A really good example of this is when you try to memorize a phone number. You'll typically break it into 2 groups of 3 and then 1 group of 4. And your brain will also go out of its way to try and memorize it with a particular cadence. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. So what your brain naturally wants to do is group things together to make it easier to recognize, and then when you have to play it back in your head, you're able to recall it very quickly. And we use these types of patterns and speech in our daily lives all the time. For example, when you go and order food, you don't blurt out your entire order and hope that the person on the other side just memorizes everything. But rather, you say one thing, give them a chance, the next thing, give them a chance, and so on and so forth. And you group that information as you try to convey it to somebody else. And so the fascinating thing is that we can actually apply this to how we train our speed. One thing I did wrong for years when trying to practice the major scale was to practice it like this. And although there's nothing wrong with playing it like that, but to try and get the entire thing up to speed is very, very difficult. And when it came to getting the scale up to speed, the problem wasn't that my hands weren't fast enough or I wasn't a skilled enough guitar player, but rather, my brain had to process every single note in order and never be wrong. If I was even a little bit hesitant, the speed would disappear. And the reason why the speed would disappear is because the sequence was too long, and it was just overwhelming to try and process every single note and never be incorrect. So if we shrink the sequence way down and make it only 3 notes, all of a sudden we can play it way faster. Is it because the notes got easier to play? Or is it because there's less to remember? And that is when it clicked for me. So instead of playing the full 18 notes of that Ionian mode across the entire neck, if we only played 4 notes, how fast could we play? So for example, if I was to play just this, and I end up playing a lot faster, is it because my hands are now magically able to play faster, or is there just less for me to remember? Like I said, our brains love simplicity. If there's an easy pattern, or if there's a melody, or just some way to make something super easy to remember, that is what we're going to be able to register the fastest. So if I truly want to work on speed, I should be working on groups to make it easy on my brain. If my hands are more than fast enough, and my brain needs to keep up, why not try to make it easy on it? So if I go back to those 4 notes and try to play that as fast as I can, it could look something like this. And so if I can play that fast, how did I do that? Truly is because it's so simple to remember. I don't really need to use a lot of brain power to replicate that sequence over and over again. So once I get back to the beginning, it just repeats, and it makes it really easy for my brain. So what happens if I take that same concept and move it to another set of strings? So instead of playing it here, I play it here. How fast can I go? And then also the same thing here. So how was I able to do that? I'm still playing in the same scale as before, but now since it's much smaller chunks, it makes it way easier on my brain, and it allows me to play substantially faster. This is how you unlock speed. And so rather than trying to play all the way up the scale, then all the way back down the scale, you can try practicing in groups. And so I started practicing my scales by using the entire scale as the framework, but then playing these groupings to truly work on speed and memorizing where the notes are and trying to simplify it so I can unlock my speed. And I can't say that this is every single player, but many players struggle going from one string to the next, and it's typically a mental block. Because what happens is you have a certain pattern on one set of strings, and then it changes on the next set of strings, and so on and so forth, and by the time you get to the G string or the B string or even the high E string, you're now so flustered that you have to absolutely slow down in order to not make a mistake. technique. And so to simplify things, you can break your scales up and practice them on sets of 2 strings. So for example, the A and E string, you can go A and D string, D and G string, G and B string, B and E string, and so on and so forth, or whatever combination of strings you'd like to use. Here's another really good example of when you simplify things, you can actually play a lot faster. I understand that that's a very simple example, but that's kind of the point. The real reason why you're struggling when you're trying to play things at super high speeds is not because you are not physically capable, but rather you have not truly memorized and internalized what you're trying to play. And honestly, this should sound like great news, because that means that there's genuinely hope for everyone to actually become an incredibly fast player. Also, you might be someone who's watching this video and you have a couple questions like, are there any ways to make it easier on my brain to visualize what I'm trying to play? And believe it or not, the answer is yes. So here are 4 different things that you can do to get your brain up to speed so you can start shredding. Number 1 is working on visualization, specifically by playing a small portion or small chunk of a scale with your eyes closed. 3 or 4 notes. Very, very simple. If you can visualize what you're trying to play in your mind, you will 100% be able to play way faster. And just as a fun little exercise, try taking one of your favorite scales, close your eyes, and visually play it in your head. Notice if you actually stumble over certain areas, maybe around the B string, for example, because of that one little shift that happens. If you can't visualize it and play it super fast in your head, that will 100% translate to your playing. Number 2 is going to be physically visualize what you're trying to play. Write out the exact scale, look at the tabs, or also look up an image of the scale on Google. This will also actually help you with tip number 1, because if you are someone who does struggle with visualizing in your head, having something to visualize because you've seen it in person can absolutely help. Number 3, and this one is very much so slept on, is humming along to the scale as you play it. If you can sing what you're trying to play, this will help you internalize the melodies so much. And finally, number 4, which is probably the first and only thing you might have been doing up until you saw this video, is of course play with a metronome. Ensuring that your notes are clean, even, and in time will obviously help you with building your speed. And if you're someone who feels like their memorization skills are actually pretty good, but you could work on your technique, check out this video right here.